Hi guys, it's Dr. Orlando going to cover bicarbonate buffer systems very briefly. I just want to use it to show you how hydrogen ions can affect pH in your bloodstream. So, a buffer system, there are many different buffer systems in our body, but the bicarbonate one is a good teaching one and it's an important one. Buffers are any chemical that can help maintain a pH range, so they're able to accommodate for shifts in hydrogen ion concentrations. Alright, so normal blood pH, if you were to take a sample of blood and stick a pH meter in it, it should read somewhere between 7.35 and 7.45. So a lot of times you'll see it just say 7.4 is the average blood pH. That's very tight control. That's a very tight parameter. And the reason that it's tightly controlled is because of, one of the reasons, is because of enzymes. Enzymes are like little factories. We're going to talk about those in a future chapter, but imagine them being a little factory. It's made up of a protein. And proteins are, and enzymes are very dependent on their shape. So if we say the shape of this enzyme is this, okay, and it's a factory, it works on something, and this is what it's working on. It has this little triangular part that fits right into that triangular part. We're going to put an S there for substrate because that's what you call the thing that an enzyme works on. And so okay, so you've got your enzyme and your substrate and they fit together well under normal pH conditions because their shape is dependent on pH. So if you change the pH, you might end up with an enzyme that now looks like this. Okay, and now this substrate is like, oh, what do I do now? And this enzyme, he's unhappy, he can't work, okay, nothing works right. So that pH is very important to tightly control. It's very important for those enzyme systems to work properly, because if your enzymes aren't working, you're not working. Okay, so how do we tightly control? Well, there's lots of different systems. I'm just going to erase this to keep it neat here. Okay, get rid of that. Good. Okay, this formula here is the one that I drew in class and said that you needed to know. Just to look at it quickly, carbon dioxide plus water yields carbonic acid, and that is a pathway that requires an enzyme. That enzyme is called carbonic anhydrase. Anytime you see that ACE at the end of the word, you know you're looking at an enzyme. So it yields carbonic acid. Carbonic acid is special because it is a weak acid, and weak acids do not dissociate fully in water. Remember the previous lectures where I showed you if you put sodium hydroxide or hydrochloric acid in water that they completely separated? These don't. What they instead do is they dissociate naturally back and forth into hydrogen ions and bicarbonate. And this process goes back and forth, but it never happens completely, so it's just a few hydrogen ions released at a time or taken back at a time. Okay, so as I talked about in class, formulas, when you see these arrows going both ways, you can kind of think of it as a system that you can feed. So if we feed this side, where the carbon dioxide is, it'll push the reaction in that direction. If we feed it from this side, get this up neater here. If we feed this side, it'll push the reaction in this direction. And by feed, I mean give it ingredients. If we give it hydrogen ions, or we give it bicarbonate, or if we give it carbon dioxide. Okay? All right, so how do we feed it? Well, I'm going to focus on this side here with the carbon dioxide, and we can look at both. And when you get to A and P, I promise you, you will look at both sides and talk about both the lungs and the kidneys, and you will go through all of this. So this is just a good starter to understand this formula. Okay, so I'm going to erase this stuff here because I want to draw right underneath my formula. I want you to be able to see the formula as I draw. Okay, so let's look at what happens if carbon dioxide increases. We're feeding it carbon dioxide. What does that mean if you're feeding carbon dioxide to it? Well, in fact, we're not really feeding carbon dioxide. If carbon dioxide is increasing, it just means that we're not exhaling well. Okay, we're not getting rid of carbon dioxide the way that we should. We should blow off carbon dioxide. It's a waste product, right? So why would that happen? It could be something like a lung problem like emphysema, where we just can't push out the lungs, or maybe it's an obstruction, or maybe there's some other problem going on. Whatever it is, carbon dioxide is not getting out of the lungs, and therefore it's staying in the bloodstream. So we've got too much carbon dioxide. So it's going to push it in the direction towards the hydrogen ions. So the result will be an increase in hydrogen ion concentration, because we're feeding this side of the equation. It's going to push this reaction in that direction. Okay? And if we increase hydrogen ions, we know that what will that do to pH? Hydrogen ions are acid, right? So it will decrease our pH, and the blood will be said to be acidotic, or the person is experiencing acidosis. Okay. And if it really did come from the lungs because the person isn't breathing well, we would say that that's a respiratory acidosis. Okay. All right, so what if there's not enough carbon dioxide? How can that happen? Well, you do have to have some amount of carbon dioxide in your bloodstream. There's a normal amount that keeps this equation balanced. Well, let's say that there's not. Why would that happen? Well, a person is, let me push this up. Yep. The person is hyperventilating. When you're hyperventilating, you're actually blowing off carbon dioxide faster than you should. And the carbon dioxide level in the blood, in a blood gas, you would see that it would be going down. Okay, so we're dropping that. If we're not feeding that side, okay, then the hydrogen ions would not be produced. So we are decreasing our hydrogen ion concentration. And the result is an increase in pH. And we call that, I know I've used the term basic all along the way here, but when you're talking about blood, we change from base to alkaline as our descriptor for a pH that's over 7, and we call this alkalosis. Alkalosis. Okay, so if a person is hyperventilating, they're blowing off too much carbon dioxide, and their pH begins to rise, we would call that a respiratory alkalosis. Okay, and on that one, treatment is relatively simple. If the person is hyperventilating, you probably have seen either in real life or in a movie, they grab a paper bag and tell the person to start breathing into a paper bag. Well, why is that? Well, in the paper bag, they're just rebreathing their own carbon dioxide, so they're bringing carbon dioxide back in. And when they do, then the carbon dioxide level will go back to normal, and the pH will go back to normal. And that's acid and base with a bicarbonate system. If you have any questions, please feel free to call me or email me. Thanks. Have a great day.